The silence aboard the Odyssey was a physical thing, a thick, suffocating blanket that pressed in from all sides. Outside the viewport, the Chroma Nebula unfolded in a kaleidoscope of impossible colors, shifting violets bleeding into bruised oranges, all swirling around the skeletal remains of a structure so vast it defied comprehension. It was a god's tomb, and they had come to ransack it. Commander Eva Rostova's knuckles were white on the armrests of her command chair. "Status report," she said, her voice a low rasp in the quiet bridge. The ship hummed with the quiet power of its containment fields, a fragile bubble of sanity in a place that felt deliberately, malevolently wrong. "Gravity plating is fluctuating, Commander," came the reply from Ensign Kale at the engineering station. "We're reading micro-tears in the hull near the lower decks." It was a risk they had to take. The energy readings pouring from the central spire were off the charts, a potential power source that could rewrite humanity's place in the galaxy. They were scavengers picking at a carcass, and the corpse was beginning to stir. Rostova watched as a tendril of nebula gas, impossibly dense and laced with an unknown radiation, drifted toward the ship. It was beautiful. It was death. The moment the tendril touched the hull, the Odyssey shuddered. Alarms blared, a cacophony of synthetic shrieks that sliced through the silence. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 9. Kale's voice was tight with panic. "Containment fields are failing. Radiation levels spiking." Rostova was on her feet, her eyes locked on the main view screen. The gas wasn't just eating through the hull, it was rewriting it. Bulkheads twisted into impossible geometries, corridors folded in on themselves. The ship was being remade into something alien. "Evasive maneuvers. Full reverse thrusters," she ordered, but it was too late. The ship groaned, a sound of tortured metal and stressed ceramics. In the engineering section, Chief Petty Officer Lena Petrova saw the truth first. The radiation wasn't killing the crew, it was resequencing their DNA. A crewman's skin began to shimmer, turning translucent, his veins glowing with the same luminescence as the nebula outside. He looked at his hands, a silent scream on his face as his bones began to soften and reshape. They were becoming part of the nebula, and the nebula was hungry. Petrova didn't scream. She moved, a blur of desperate efficiency. The resequencing radiation was a cascading failure, a chain reaction of biological horrors spreading through the ship. She saw a lieutenant's eyes melt into pools of liquid light, her body dissolving into a cloud of glittering motes that drifted toward the ceiling. Petrova slammed her hand on a manual override, rerouting all available power to the internal environmental shields. It was a desperate, Hail Mary play, a shield designed to contain biological warfare agents, not a fundamental rewriting of matter. For a second, it worked. The glittering motes were halted, a shimmering dome of force containing the dissolving lieutenant. But the shield was buckling, the energy required to maintain it draining the ship's reserves at an alarming rate. "Commander, I need more power," she barked into her comm, her voice raw. "I'm building a cage, but it's made of paper and the monster is chewing through it." She watched as the lieutenant's form, now a contained vortex of light and flesh, pulsed in time with the nebula's rhythm. It was a living thing, and it wanted out. On the bridge, Rostova made a choice that would define them. "Kale, divert all non-essential power from weapons and shields to Petrova's containment grid. Now." The ship groaned again, the lights dimming as power was siphoned away from defensive systems. "Commander, without shields, we're sitting ducks." Kale protested. "The nebula is trying to eat us alive." "Then we'll give it a stomach ache," Rostova replied, her eyes never leaving the view screen. She saw the tendril outside, now a thick, pulsating rope of energy, wrapping itself around the ship like a boa constrictor. It was pulling them in, dragging them toward the central spire. "Petrova, what's the status of the containment field?" "It's holding, Commander, but just barely. It's like trying to hold back a flood with a teacup." Petrova's voice was strained, but there was a new note in it, one of grim determination. She was seeing the radiation not just as a threat, but as a form of energy. And energy, she knew, could be directed. She began to reconfigure the shield's modulation, tuning it to a specific frequency she detected in the nebula's chaotic emissions. It was a long shot, a guess fueled by desperation. Inside the containment field, the lieutenant's vortex form pulsed, growing stronger. It was no longer just a remnant of a man. It was a nascent being, a child of the nebula. It reached out a tendril of pure light, probing the shield's barrier. Petrova watched the readings, her mind racing. The shield was a broad-spectrum energy barrier, but it was fighting a war of attrition. The vortex was a focused point of immense power. It was like trying to stop a laser with a floodlight. Then she saw it. A resonance. A harmonic frequency where the vortex's energy signature and the shield's modulation field briefly aligned. It was a flicker, a moment of perfect synchronization. In that moment, the vortex wasn't fighting the shield, it was feeding it. An idea, insane and brilliant, sparked in her mind. She began to input commands, not to strengthen the shield, but to amplify that specific harmonic frequency. She was going to tune the shield to the vortex's song, and in doing so, turn the vortex's own power against it. It was a dance on the edge of a knife. One wrong move, and the containment field would shatter, releasing a being of pure energy into the ship's corridors. The vortex pulsed, and the containment field flared, a brilliant flash of white light that made everyone on the bridge flinch. "Petrova, what's happening?" Rostova demanded, gripping the edge of her console. The ship shuddered violently as the nebula's tendril constricted tighter, the pressure threatening to crush the Odyssey like a nut. I'm not sure, Commander." Petrova's voice was a whisper of awe. "The harmonic, it's working. The vortex is stabilizing." On the screen, the contained vortex stopped its chaotic thrashing. It began to spin, not in wild abandon, but with a slow, deliberate purpose. The light it emitted was no longer chaotic, but coherent, focused. It was no longer a prisoner. It was a captive power source. Petrova had turned a monster into a battery. "Commander, I'm reading a massive energy buildup inside the containment field. It's contained, but it's looking for a way out." The vortex had become a bomb that was now part of their defense system. The nebula outside sensed this change. The tendril constricting the ship paused, then began to push, not pull, as if testing this new, unexpected variable. Rostova saw the shift in the nebula's behavior immediately. The gentle, swirling beauty had vanished, replaced by a focused, predatory intelligence. The tendrils weren't just wrapping around the ship, they were probing, analyzing. They had recognized the threat contained within the Odyssey. "Kale, what are our options?" she asked, her voice steady despite the terror coiling in her gut. The ship was caught between two titans, the nebula's physical assault and the contained vortex's volatile energy. "Weapons are offline, Commander, and we can't break free. The nebula's got us in a vice." Rostova's eyes darted from the view screen to the tactical display, which showed the vortex's energy signature glowing like a tiny sun inside the ship. It was a weapon, but it was a weapon pointed at their own heart. Then she saw it. A pattern. The tendrils weren't attacking randomly. They were moving in a sequence, a complex, three-dimensional dance that mirrored the energy flows of the central spire. They weren't trying to destroy the ship. They were trying to get past it, to reach the spire. The nebula was at war with itself. "The spire," Rostova breathed, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. The gods didn't just die here. They were killed. By the nebula. The nebula wasn't a place. It was a creature. A vast, ancient, and wounded creature, and the central spire was the source of its injury. The tendrils weren't just tentacles. They were antibodies, white blood cells trying to purge a foreign object from the nebula's body. The Odyssey was caught in the crossfire. "Petrova, can you use the vortex to target the spire?" Rostova asked, a wild, desperate plan forming in her mind. "Can you aim that contained energy?" Petrova was silent for a long moment, her fingers flying across her console. "Theoretically, yes, but the vortex's energy is tuned to the nebula's harmonics. Firing it at the spire would be like throwing a lit match into a powder keg. It could trigger an explosion that would vaporize this entire sector. Or, Rostova countered, it could cauterize the wound. It could seal the spire, and in doing so, stop the nebula's immune response from tearing us apart." It was a choice between certain destruction and a gamble that might save them all. The ship groaned as another tendril slammed against the hull, cracking a viewport. The vacuum of space began to hiss into the corridor. Petrova made the final adjustments, her face bathed in the cold glow of her console. "Ready to fire when you give the word, Commander." The vortex in the containment chamber pulsed, a contained star waiting for release. Rostova looked at the view screen, at the central spire that pulsed with a sickly, dark light, a wound in the heart of the nebula. The tendrils were converging on the ship, a final, coordinated assault to eliminate the obstacle. "All hands," Rostova said, her voice calm and clear, cutting through the ship's alarms. "This is Commander Rostova. We are about to commit an act of cosmic surgery. Hold on to something." She took a deep breath. "Petrova, fire the vortex. Aim for the spire's primary energy node." Now, a beam of pure, coherent light erupted from the Odyssey, not from a weapon, but from a point deep within its own wounded hull. It lanced through the nebula, a silver needle piercing a veil of color. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the spire flared, not with an explosion, but with a blinding flash of pure white light. The tendrils recoiled, writhing in agony as the wound was sealed. The nebula's chaotic fury subsided, replaced by a profound, echoing silence. The Odyssey was adrift in a quiet, healing nebula, its crew alive, forever changed by the mistake that had become their salvation.